Hi everyone, welcome back to another sew along for my new Know Me pattern. This is ME2123. So this is a t-shirt and shorts set. So in this video we will be sewing view B, which is the shorts. They are a woven short with an elastic waist as well as a drawstring. It features a ruffle at the waistband as well as along the hem. Another feature I added is that the hem kind of curves up towards the side seam instead of just like a straight hem. I thought it gave it a little bit more of a retro vibe, especially paired with that baseball t-shirt. So the suggested fabrics for the shorts, broadcloth, chambray, cotton blends, lightweight linen blends. For the cover, this is like a cotton shirting, and you will see in this sew along the fabric I'm using is like a textured cotton with like almost like a linen feel to it. And then for the shorts you also need a couple notions. You will need 3/4 inch elastic and 1/2 inch ribbon or twill tape or any kind of drawstring that you want to use. So you may notice the pattern comes in both misses sizes and girl sizes. The misses sizes range from extra small to extra large, which is about a 4 through a 22. And the girls is a small through a large, which is about a 7 through a 16. So with including the kid sizes in the pattern, I really wanted to make sure this was beginner friendly, especially for those young beginner sewists. Hi.
Hi.
Do you want to learn how to sew some shorts for yourself this summer?
Yes.
Yes. So anyway, if you are an adult making this set for yourself, or you are making a matching set for you and your mini, or you have a young beginner sewist that wants to learn to sew it for themselves, I'm hoping everyone has fun with this pattern, and I cannot wait to see all the versions that are created. Okay, let's get started on sewing the shorts. Okay, for the pattern pieces for the shorts, we have pieces 5 and 6. This is the shorts front and the shorts back. You need to cut 2 of each of these. Piece 7 is the pocket bag. You need to cut 4 of these. 8 and 9 are the front and back ruffle. You need to cut 2 of each of those. And then piece 10, you do not need to cut out of fabric. This is just your elastic guide. Okay, let's get started on the shorts. So the first thing we're gonna do is cut 2 pieces of interfacing, 2 inches by 1.5 inches. And then on the wrong side of the fabric of your 2 front shorts, you see you have the buttonhole mark here on both sides. This is the wrong side of the fabric. You're going to place your interfacing down and use your iron to adhere that interfacing. Okay, so the interfacing is applied to the wrong side. I'm now going to flip them over to the right side. I drew the buttonhole marking on the right side of the fabric as well. So now you can use your machine to sew the buttonholes in those 2 places. Buttonholes sewn. They're just a little wet because I cleaned off the marking, but I did cut them open. Make sure you do that before we move on to the waistband later. Just wanted to mention before we start attaching the pockets to the shorts, if you plan on finishing the raw edges of your shorts, now would be a good time to do it along the curved edge of all 4 pocket pieces. Let's see here, you can use your serger, zigzag stitch, whatever method you prefer to finish your edges. So here I have the front shorts. This is the right side of the fabric facing up. We are going to take pocket pieces and we're going to lay it down, lining up the raw edge of the side seam, and we are going to match up the notch and the 2 small dots, which that is not even close. Here we go. Okay, we're going to do it on the other side as well. Okay, and then on each one we are going to stitch 3/8 of an inch from the raw edge along the pocket. And then you're going to do the same exact thing with the back shorts. So you're going to do the back shorts in the other 2 pockets with right sides together along the raw edge of the side seam, line up the notches and the small dots, pin in place, and also sew those 3/8 of an inch from the raw edge. So there I have the pocket bags sewn to both of the front pieces and to both of the back pieces. Also, it is a good time to note that if you want to finish the raw edge of your side seams, you can do that on all 4 pieces. Okay, so for each piece, for both the front pieces and both the back pieces, for all 4 pieces, you are going to press your pocket bag away from the shorts, and you are going to understitch along the pocket bag. So what that means to understitch is that you're going to be just stitching close to the seam on the pocket bag. You'll be going through the pocket bag and the seam allowance, close to the seam, about 1/8 of an inch away, and that will help the pocket bag not roll out to the front once it's tucked under. Now you're going to take 1 back and 1 front and lay them right sides together, lining up the side seam. And you're going to sew from the top to the small dot here, and then again from this small dot down to the hem, 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Make sure you leave the space in between the small dots open. Do not sew between the small dots. Okay, once that's sewn, you can see by leaving it open between the dots, that's what leaves it open for your pocket. So now, just with the 2 pocket bags together, sew 5/8 of an inch from the edge around the curve of the pocket bag until it meets your side seam stitching. Okay, the pocket bag is sewn together. So now you can open it up with the wrong side facing up and put the pocket bag towards the front. And then you need to clip into the seam allowance right above and right below the pocket bag. Clip into the seam allowance of the back, just right up to that stitching of the seam allowance. That way we are going to press the seam open above and below the pocket bag and then press the pocket bag towards the front. Okay, now bring them back together with right sides together and line up the inner leg seam here, and we're going to stitch that together 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge, and you can finish the seam allowance if you'd like. So this leg is done. You can now repeat all those steps: the side seam, the pocket bag, and the inner leg. Repeat all those steps on the other front and back. Now we are going to move on to the ruffles. So there's a front ruffle and a back ruffle, and they are 2 different lengths. So just remember, so you don't mix them up, the front ruffle does have a notch, but the back ruffle does not. So we are going to take 1 front ruffle and 1 back ruffle and put them together, right sides together, and you're going to stitch on each side 5/8 of an inch from the edge, and then on this side 5/8 of an inch from the edge, and you can press those seams open. Okay, so front and back ruffle are sewn together. To make a loop, I pressed the side seams open, and then you just need to press, fold and press the ruffle together with wrong sides together, lining up the raw edge to create 1 loop like this. Then you need to set your machine to the longest straight stitch and sew 2 lines of basting stitches from side seam to side seam. So that's 2 rows from side seam to side seam on the front ruffle and from side seam to side seam on the back ruffle. do one line 5/8 of an inch from the edge and one about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and make sure you leave long thread tails at the ends so you can gather. So there are my basting stitches. As you can see, they stop at the side seam, so there's loose threads on either side of the side seams, both sides. So what I'm going to do now is lay one leg on my shorts with the right side of the fabric out, and then I'm going to take the ruffle and making sure, so I have the front up, the back is under there. Take the ruffle, making sure the front ruffle is up. Remember, that's the one with the notch. I'm going to slide the shorts in there. We're going to be lining up the raw edges, so I'm going to match up that notch on the ruffle with the notch on the shorts, the inner leg seam, and the other seam of the ruffle with the side seam. Then you can take those loose thread tails, and if you gently pull on them, it will gather up the fabric. So you just want to keep gently pulling and gathering with your fingers until the ruffle lines up with the edge of the shorts. Okay, I have the ruffle attached around the entire hem, as you can see here. As you gather that ruffle to meet the edge of the shorts, you can just use your fingers to like evenly distribute the gather so it's all even. I pinned it all in place, and now I am going to sew it together 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge, and then you can finish the raw edge if you'd like. Once the ruffle is sewn on, press the ruffle away from the shorts with the seam allowance pressed up towards the shorts. It is an optional step, but if you are worried about that ruffle flipping up, you could always top stitch along the shorts going through that seam allowance, and that will keep it from flipping up. Now you just need to repeat those steps for the ruffle on the other leg. I have already done so here. Now turn one leg inside out and keep the other one right side out, and then you're going to slide the one that's right side out inside the one that's inside out. Make sure you are matching up the front with the front and the back with the back. You can match up the inner leg seam, line up those notches. Okay, so these are pinned together like this. Now you will notice this is the front. You can see where my buttonhole is. This is the back side. On the back, there are 2 small dots. We want to sew, we're going to be sewing around here, but we need to leave it open between these 2 small dots. So sew the small area right up until this first small dot, leave that open, and then sew from this small dot all the way around back up to the top. And here's a closer look at the small dots on the back. So leave it open between these 2 small dots. Okay, so both legs are sewn together. I pressed the seam open, and you can see in the back here where we left it open between the 2 dots. That's where we're going to eventually insert the elastic. So now we can move on to the waistband. The first step, I'm going to turn it around here, is we are going to fold under the raw edge by 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so I have folded under and pressed 3/8 of an inch. Now we need to fold under again along the fold line. You can see on the front and back legs there is a fold line. I have it marked on mine here. So we are going to fold and press along the entire waistband along that fold line. Okay, so I have folded along the fold line and pinned it in place. there's a thread there. I just wanted to note that, remember, your pockets are pressed towards the front. So when you fold this down along the fold line, you will be folding over top, the top edge of that pocket. So you'll be catching it underneath, and that's what will hold the pocket bag in place. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and stitch around the entire length of the waist, close to the folded edge. So that is stitched in place. We are going to stitch one more time through the waistband along the stitch line that is on the pattern. If you did not mark the stitch line on your fabric, it's about 3/4 of an inch from the top fold. So just 3/4 of an inch from the top, stitch again. Okay, so here we go. I am 3/4 of an inch from the folded edge of the waist. So those two lines of stitching, that creates the channel for the elastic and the drawstring, and above, between that stitch and the edge of the shorts, that creates the ruffle at the top. Okay, I've used the elastic guide pattern piece to cut my 3/4 inch wide elastic. I'm going to use this bodkin tool to thread it, but you can use a safety pin or another tool you have. But in the back here on the inside is that hole we left. That's where we are going to thread our elastic through. So just bring it through the entire length of the waistband till you come out the other end. Okay, so I have threaded the elastic through all the way. I pulled it out a little extra. And before you do this, you can safety pin it together and try it on to make sure you have the elastic the right length that you want. Once you have it, overlap the elastic by like a 1/2 inch or so, and then you want to stitch that elastic together. Some people like to do like a box and an X. Some people just do a zigzag stitch through it a few times. Just secure it really well, and then pull it to get everything flat. Okay, so the elastic is in. Now you can just use a needle and thread to like slip stitch that opening closed. The last step is to thread through the drawstring. So you can use, like I said in the beginning of the video, you can use a ribbon, twill tape, any kind of drawstring you have. I'm going to use this like white rope. Just attach it to a safety pin or other tool, and starting in one buttonhole, just thread it through until you get to the other side. So that's the end of the sew along. I hope that was helpful, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments.